Hi, my name is Ellen Aaron. I'm 23 years old, and I moved to Tewksbury, Massachusetts in April of 2008, making me a resident of the town for about 13 years. And 8 of those 13 years I spent at Tewksbury Public Schools, 2 years at the John F. Ryan, 2 years at John W. Wynn Middle School, and 4 years at TMHS, where I was part of the class of 2016. And this past May, I graduated from UMass Amherst with an undergrad degree in economics and political science. I wanted to make this video today regarding the retirement of the Redmen mascot of our town. This past summer, we saw police officers murder George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and as a result, police reform and racial injustices have been brought to the forefront of America. A lot of positive things have come out of this Black Lives Matter movement, such as the Washington Redskins finally retiring their mascot. Seeing this was an inspiration to a lot of cities and towns across America, and they're doing the same and advocating for the removal of their derogatory mascots. We saw a movement in Tewksbury this summer to get rid of the Redmen mascot, but it went nowhere, which is very disappointing. So today, I decided to go and do some research on the terms Redmen and Redskin. So as one does, I opened up my Google browser and I typed in the search engine Native American views on the Redmen mascot. And the second hit I got was an article written in Indian Country Today by Professor Angelique Eaglewoman from Mitchell Hamlin School of Law in St. Paul, Minnesota. And she discusses a study done by Utah State University psychologists regarding Native American youth. And they found that Native American youth deal with the highest levels of suicide, the highest levels of alcohol-related deaths, and the lowest quality of life in the nation. They also found that these Native American youth, on a daily basis, deal with negative stereotypes and microaggressions. Now, these negative stereotypes and microaggressions are found to be prevalent in school systems using derogatory Indian mascots. Now, the article also talks about Suzanne Harjo, a well-renowned Native American advocate and strong opposer to the Washington Redskins moniker. And she talks about how the term Redskins is anything but honor for the Native American people. It's a process referring to the skinning of the Native people, a tradition that began in the centuries when colonies, territories, and states would put out a bounty of proclamations on dead Indians. Now think about it. To say that the term Redskins is not racist is a blatant lie. History proves otherwise. Colonists would champion the skin and the heads of Native Americans. And that's where that word comes from. As I continued my research, I came across an article written by WBUR about Indigenous student Thomas Jurizek of McGill University. Thomas was talking about how he went to his first football game and he heard the students chanting Redmen. And to him, that was so shocking because he grew up hearing the word Redmen used as a slur towards Native Americans. So you gotta think, Redmen used as a slur, Redskin used as a term that was talking about the process of skinning Native Americans. Both of these terms are outrageously racist. So why do people keep wanting to keep a mascot with a racist connotation? And people will claim and say that, well, I'm not using it in a racist way. But it doesn't matter the way you're using a word that is rooted in racism. It's this term, the term Redmen, is historically racist. It was meant to demean and antagonize Native Americans. And a lot of people will use a poll done by the Washington Post in 2016 where they went out and asked Native Americans if they were offended by the Redskins moniker, the Washington Redskins moniker. And 9 out of 10 Native Americans said that they weren't offended. But if you go into the details and see what these Native Americans elaborated on, they usually responded along the lines of that they didn't want Native Americans to be forgotten about, and at least the mascot was a way people would remember the Native Americans. And you gotta think, why? Why are Native Americans only being talked about in terms of a mascot? We need to do better and we need to be better. We talk about honoring and feeling prideful about the Native Americans, but how can we say that when we know nothing about the local Native Americans that lived here? I never once was taught or learned about the tribes that lived in Tewksbury. And in my process of research, I was learning about the Pennacock Federation of the Merrimack Valley and the Pawtucket and Wamasett tribes that reside in the greater Lowell area. That is what we should be teaching people and teaching the students and the residents of Tewksbury about. That is honor towards the Native American people that lived here, not a racist mascot. I think it's important for me to say that I didn't always hold this view about removing the Redmen mascot. When I was a senior in high school at TMHS in 2016, I was pretty indifferent to the matter. But as I grew up and I went to college and I learned more about the racial context behind the words Redmen and Redskin, I understood that we should not have Redmen as a mascot for our town. And I encourage the other residents of Tewksbury to do your part and to do your research so that you can understand the meaning behind these words. Interestingly enough, UMass Amherst also had a Redmen mascot, but the Student Senate voted to remove the Redmen mascot and to replace it with the Minutemen in 1972, 49 years ago. Similarly, Natick, Mass. voted to remove their Redmen mascot in 2007, 14 years ago. Tewksbury, it's your turn to do the same. I know that there is a bill in the state Senate right now calling to prohibit the Native American mascots in the Commonwealth. So I urge Senator Feingold, Rep. Nguyen, and Rep. Robertson to vote in favor of this bill. But also to our school committee, to our superintendent, and to our assistant superintendent, please hear us out. Hear the youth of Tewksbury saying that we want the Redmen mascot removed. I also wanted to point out that according to the census population estimates of 2019, the population of Tewksbury stands at 92% white alone. And I wanted to make a point that the majority of Tewksbury, their life is not going to change whether or not the mascot is Redmen or not Redmen. But the person whose life it's going to change is the Native American youth in Massachusetts and across the country. We're going to create a more inclusive environment for them, one that does not include a derogatory term that was used to demean and antagonize their people. We will create a better environment for them to live and to go to school in. So why are you fighting against that? You shouldn't be. So Tewksbury, make it a more inclusive environment or not. The choice is yours.